What's up, y'all? You're listening to the Mag Nation podcast. I'm Alex Miller, joined always by Robert Cessna. Cease. We survived the trip to Mississippi, and so did the Aggies, which means there's a top 15 matchup at Kyle Field this weekend. There's a lot on the line for both teams, really, and it's kind of precarious situation when you consider where these teams started to where now they've come.
Yeah, they both had won 6 in a row. What I like about LSU, it is more of a feel of a rivalry game. I always remember when A&M went into the SEC, everybody tried to play off Arkansas and LSU as rivals. And, of course, there's nothing beats Texas. But what has happened in the 12, 13 years in the SEC, the Arkansas game almost every year is good, is exciting. And so is the LSU game. You think about all the times, and, you forget about a lot of things. And we were talking last night. I forgot that A&M stormed the field 2 years ago on a 5-7 team. I mean, but
they stormed the field twice, actually.
But I'm saying, but a 5-7 team. They did it in the 7 overtimes.
Mm-hmm.
That's everybody gets a pass for that. A 5-7 team. But my point being is LSU matters. A&M and LSU matters. And now that they're both top 15, it even matters more that they're leading the conference. And so everybody gets jacked up because LSU game matters whether they weren't top 15. But you had that, great.
Well, there's a whole lot to digest because, let's be honest, there's a lot of really good matchups in this game. Let's start with the LSU offense versus the A&M defense. LSU's got 2 probable first-rounders on that offensive line, anchoring at tackle with Emory Jones and Will Campbell. On the other side, A&M's defensive line has really started to come into its own. Linebacker play was probably as good as it's been all season last week against Mississippi State. It was interesting listening to Brian Kelly's press conference from yesterday because, Nussmeier, he's throwing at about a 60% clip, which is, pretty good, but not great. And so they were just asking him, like, hey, what kind of goes into that with the way you guys throw the ball and kind of the passing schemes? And Kelly was like, look, we could run these dink and dime passes all day long and get up to the 70, 75 percentile, but LSU's offense is way more complex than that. And they've got the quarterback. They feel confident to do it. They've got an offensive line that can protect long enough to where those passing concepts can develop. And they've got the receivers, apparently, that can run the routes, and it's no surprise because Kyron Lacey's pretty dang good.
Well, you saw last week A&M had some problems with a quarterback that had a big-time arm, and Nussmeier has that. And when you look, like you said, LSU's also starting to run the ball better. When you look at they ran the ball well against Arkansas last week. So a very confident offense is coming in here. And when you look, A&M's defense really has had problems because they've given up the big play at times. Even in the Missouri game, they gave up 2 or 3 that counted and 1 that didn't. But I look for points to be scored in this game only because when the offense knows what they're doing, I don't care how good he is, because first 2 games, A&M wasn't getting a lot of sacks because what were they doing? Notre Dame came in here, boom, boom, they threw the ball. LSU's going to be the same way. So I think it's a good matchup. But anytime you get a good matchup like that, when the offense knows what they're doing, they're going to score points.
Yeah, it was interesting because Kelly said, hey, Caden Durham, he's been a pretty good freshman running back, but he's only playing at like 80, 85%, which I think is kind of interesting to note in a game that could be pretty physical. So that's definitely something to watch going into this one. And then, where A&M stands defensively, Nick Scorton, Elko said, was dealing with some sickness, sounded like he was dehydrated, had the cramps. He'll be good to go. Cassius Howell had a lot of runway on Saturday's game. And, another guy that we've talked about before, BJ Mays, his snap count's really going up. Jaden Hill got beat early in that game, and Mays came in there, and A&M was a lot better in that second half like we talked about Saturday. So this is going to be a really good test for A&M secondary to see how far they've come through the first half of the season.
Yeah, because once again, they're susceptible to give up the big play. You start early. Notre Dame, they would like to have that one over. This is a chance really for a do-over because you got another top 10 team coming to town. Big for you to win. I think if A&M can keep them under 28 points, you got to like your chances. But also, LSU's got a very good place kicker. He had 4 field goals last week. He's almost money. So then once again once the other team gets into your 30, they're going to be able to score points. And so that's a concern because sometimes A&M has not played teams with good place kickers. So that, along with everything else, one thing I do like in A&M's favor is this is the second road trip in a row for LSU. I don't care what you say. Arkansas, A&M was very physical when they played Arkansas, and I know Arkansas was very physical for LSU as well. Going on back-to-back road games does take a lot out of you in this conference, so A&M does get an edge there.
Yeah, on the offensive side for A&M, going against a vastly improved LSU defense, which I think 3 weeks ago, people would have been like, huh? If you would have told me LSU's defense was going to get better after losing Harold Perkins, thought you would have been crazy. And then here comes this guy named Whit Weeks that has just taken the league by storm. He leads the SEC in tackles and is just a monster all over the field, it seems like.
Well, here's the deal is, and I think we're seeing this in A&M, Brian Kelly wants a championship, so he wasn't going to put up with a bad defense. He had a Heisman Trophy winner last year, and he couldn't get to the college football playoffs. So he brought a new defensive coordinator, the guy from Missouri, I forget his name.
Blake
Baker. But here's the deal is, it's not so much that the LSU players are playing better. They're understanding the scheme better, and the guy calling his plays knows what he's doing. It's much like Elko when he's playing defensive coordinator, in this case, head coach. A&M's defense has been a lot better when Elko's running the show. This guy, defense gets better every week. It's not because Perkins is gone or he wasn't a stud. He was. A&M could be glad he is gone, because if he was, they'd be even better. So that defense is getting better every week because LSU's always had talent. Now that talent knows what they're doing. And so I think this is a great matchup because I give A&M a little bit of the edge there again, like I do on LSU, if Connor Wegman plays well. The problem is he didn't play well last week.
Yeah, I mean, that's kind of the big question mark with A&M's offense right now. Which Connor Wegman is going to show up? If it's the guy that showed up against Missouri, A&M has a really good chance to win every game they're going to play the rest of the year. But if it's the guy that played against Mississippi State, they're going to have a hard time beating teams like LSU, South Carolina, Texas, and maybe even Auburn on the road. That, I mean, Auburn's pretty bad, but let's be honest, they've been in some dogfights throughout the season. So, Cease, what's one thing you're really looking to see Wegman take a step forward in this week if A&M's going to win this game?
I don't want to see the happy feet. I saw the happy feet when he threw the first interception. He looked so razor sharp against Missouri. I don't expect that from any quarterback for a whole game, because when you get the kind of defensive talent you have in this league and the defensive coordinators can dial up blitzes, you're going to have bad plays. He had too many bad plays last week. That's the key, and LSU's defense is going to be the type that can make you possibly have bad plays, so you can't make bad choices. So once again, Elko touched on it, they won the game losing the turnover battle. If they lose the turnover battle to LSU, they're probably going to lose the game.
You know, something that's going to be very interesting to watch is the health of A&M's offensive line. Chase Basantis, still not too sure what his status is. I mean, he's been a rock this year for A&M. The left side of that line has just been a wall with Trey Zune, who, I don't know, is he paying Elko to give him player of the week every week? He's giving him some of his NIL money? I don't know. But he's been playing really freaking good is what I do know. And, you know, TJ Shanahan came in. Cam Dewberry came in. They did just fine, it seemed like, from what we could tell. But how does the health of A&M's offensive line possibly play into things? And it just goes to show how far A&M's offensive line has come, given they have had to go to backups, and they've been able to pretty much keep pace of what they're doing on offense for the most part.
Yeah, that's my number 2 thing to watch, because when you go back and look at the Arkansas game and the Mississippi State game. A&M didn't run the ball well for the first 3 quarters against Arkansas, and really the first half against Mississippi State. And not that I really expect them to, because the other teams stacked the boxes. So when you stack the box, you got to pick it up in your passing game. A&M was unable to do that in both the games in Arkansas to the fourth quarter, and then they ran the ball because they wore out Arkansas. Last week, they started making some pass plays, but they also ran the ball. Can A&M run the ball against a stacked box? You got to be able to pick up some things, because I think LSU will try to put the game in Wegman's hands. I think they have a better chance, but still, mark of a good running team is knowing you're going to run it. The other team knows you're going to run it, and you're still able to pick up 3 or 4 yards on first down. What I've seen too many times in A&M, they come out, the box is stacked, they run, and suddenly it's 2nd and 8 or 2nd and 9, and suddenly the defense wins. And we saw that even when Marcel Reed was quarterback. Then they're behind the chains. It's hard to move them. And once again, it's just such an intriguing game, and that's one of the things I want to look at. Can A&M run the ball? Because, LSU feels pretty good what they've been able to run the ball. Like I said, again, Arkansas, they're going to come in and say, hey, we can run the ball in addition to throwing it, because they've only allowed 2 sacks the whole year. That's an amazing stat when you've played 3 SEC games and you've only allowed 2 sacks for the whole year.
2 more notes on each offensive line. One thing A&M, I think, needs to do is play a clean game, because they had 2 30-yard runs from Moss get brought back last week, which, who knows, maybe one of those or both of them were opened up so big because of the flags. But point is, whereas A&M at times struggled to run the ball, it was negated 60 yards because of penalties. A&M's going to have to play clean. Shanahan's had some penalties stack up on him in some of the previous games. If he's going to get some more playing time, they're gonna need those guys to play as clean as possible. And then on the other side with LSU, you mentioned only giving up 2 sacks all year, and Kelly talking about how they really try to let Nussmeier get those strong developing plays. If A&M's getting the pass rush, I'm curious if they start taking a few of those more short intermediate throws to kind of mix it up a little bit and prevent A&M from getting home to the quarterback as much as they possibly could.
You brought up a good point, because what I feel is going to happen, which what we've seen, is when A&M gets behind in the chains, I don't think they take chances because they're worried about turnovers. Elko constantly talks about turnovers. He's a defensive-minded coach. He hates turnovers. You realize how important that is. So suddenly when he has 2nd and 11, 3rd and 12, they do safe things. They're not going to
run the ball, slip screens.
They're not going to do it. Whereas LSU will take chances because they've got faith in their quarterback and faith in their wide receivers. That's who they are. Now they might risk an interception. So that's why, getting back, it's very important for A&M not to have those motion penalties or what have you, because then if it's 2nd and 15, they're going to be conservative, because once again, if they don't have to, once again, Elko feels that's a recipe for victory. You got to remember, folks, he's 6-1, so it is his ball game, so to speak. He knows what he's doing. So you have a little bit contrasting style, because I think Kelly's still the guy. Hey, we're going to throw it downfield. It's 3rd and 15. We might get a pass interference call. We might make it. So you've got 2 conflicting philosophies, but that's another thing that adds to the game.
And A&M was 9 of 14 last week on 3rd down. Going to be hard to replicate that stat again. 9 of 14, and I think A&M coming into the game had only converted about 41% of their 3rd down, which is not a bad number, but getting it into the mid-60s, that's pretty hard.
Well, and I thought the game was all over. It's one of those games, and I thought they were so ragged. I'm thinking to myself, they were 9 for 14, but they only still scored 34 points. Not enough big explosive plays. Like you said, bring those 2 30-yard runs back. A 30-yard run usually translates to at least 3 points, if not 7. What happens is they get behind the chains because they're holding, and then they have to punt the ball away. So once again, it's those penalties, those nagging penalties. And I haven't done enough research, but LSU's usually a highly penalized team because they take chances. Once again, they don't worry about it. But if any team in this game this week, I expect a dogfight. If any team would get up by 2 scores, I think, there's a lot of pressure, because let's remember, LSU laid an egg last time they came here. They were number 5 in the college football playoff 2 years ago. Now, they got killed by Georgia in the championship game, but they were in line to make the college football playoff, and then A&M hung it on them bad, 38-23. So I know LSU remembers that. Now, you're going to say, well, Cessna, they're going to want to make amends. That's true, but if they'd fall behind like 10-0 first quarter with that crowd at Kyle Field, if Nussmeier comes in and makes one bad boneheaded play, that's where your home field advantage can turn into a victory.
It's probably going to be a pretty crazy atmosphere Saturday night. I mean, if they're doing the whole blackout thing, it's going to be at night. Looked like the lines for student tickets was crazy. I mean, you look at the secondary resale market. I mean, good luck getting in for under $300. So
yeah, we had some people coming in. My eldest daughter's in-laws are coming in, and they bought 4 tickets a week ago. They wanted to wait. They didn't want to wait to these last games to see what happened, and they paid $1,000 for 4 tickets on the second deck. But it's a game. It's a game everybody wants to see. Everybody's jacked up. Like I said, A&M and LSU has been great since they went back to the SEC and playing each other. It's just one of many good games that you get from the SEC.
Well, I think that's going to do it for us this week on the podcast. Be sure to check theeagle.com for all of our coverage leading up to Saturday's game. You might see Cease's favorite Taylor Swift song since Mike Elko wouldn't disclose his.
Well, what's funny is I had a laugh when he said that. My youngest daughter is going to New Orleans Friday night for Taylor Swift, and I laughed when he said that. I go, once again, you think they're football coaches? We're just all human. And, I got a daughter going down to Taylor Swift on Friday night. I said, you better look out for Elko's wife. Maybe they'll buy you a drink or something.
All right. Thanks for tuning in this week, y'all. We'll see you next week on the My Nation podcast.